Oh, hello and welcome. I'm so happy you joined us. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, your host and a career and life coach for women. I am passionate about a couple of things when it comes to working with professional women. The first one is helping you create a life and career that fulfills you. And the second one is introducing you to incredible guests who will help you explore different perspectives about career transition and approaches and practices and tips. That's why I do this program. So if anything strikes a chord with you as we're talking here today and you want more information, be sure to check out the show notes below so you can connect with us, follow us, subscribe, or rate the show. Leave us a review. We love to hear comments. So feeling stuck or limited is an all too common feeling among women today. Unfortunately, it's so prevalent among my guests and my clients that we're talking about limits again on today's show. We've done this before. Earlier this season, we talked about moving beyond your upper limits, reaching a ceiling and being unable to move past it. Well, today, my guest will share her perspective on feeling limited in your career, what that might look like, and how to move beyond that perceived limitation. My guest is Christine O'Brien Horstman, a certified professional coach with a niche in career coaching like me. She is also an accredited DISC trainer and a professional development instructor. Christine's specialties are emotional intelligence and communication. Her real knack is helping people articulate their worth and what they want. As a chronic illness warrior who has added long haul COVID to her health resume, Christine uses her love for writing to help her cope, and she believes in the power of putting thoughts and goals on paper. So she wrote a book, and that book is called Deal With It, Doll, Coaching Yourself Through Crisis. It's a timely resource to help you grow through change and deal with life's many curveballs with resilience, confidence, and hope. And who doesn't want more of that on the other side of a crisis? So we're going to talk about when you feel limited. Welcome, Christine. I'm so happy to have you here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, always a pleasure. So let's start by setting the stage a bit. In your experience, both personally and as a coach, what might women be experiencing that would describe that feeling of limitation, being limited?
I mean, I do think stuck is the word that so often people use. They feel stuck. Typically, when you have a conversation with someone about it, every idea or suggestion, there's resistance. That's not possible. I can't. It's that feeling of when the shirt's one size too small and it's uncomfortable. Or I always joke the worst case is when it's like the jog bra, you can barely get it off and on and you feel twisted up and like you're going to come out of your skin.
Boy, that's quite a description. A shirt too small and you're uncomfortable. I love that. And you feel like you're all twisted up and feeling like you're coming out of your skin. Those aren't nice feelings. Those don't feel good.
No, not at all.
Okay. So, and I talk about being stuck a lot. I think we all do. I don't know of a better word. I haven't come up with one yet. And I often say, don't stay stuck where you don't belong.
Right.
Because this is not, feeling these feelings is not how we are supposed to feel about anything in life, and especially about our careers.
Right.
So let's talk about some particular situations that might cause us to feel limited. For instance, what if a client hasn't appropriately negotiated at the start of the job and feels now stuck with a lower pay rate or salary? How can they break through that perceived limitation?
Yeah, that's a hard one. And it's been interesting. Recently, I've had several clients come to me with this is the issue. This is the issue that they're struggling with. They realize in hindsight, they didn't really claim their worth. That leaves them with a feeling of I settled or I should have. And then they feel bad because they didn't.
Mhm.
And it's often a lot of people are uncomfortable negotiating. Some people catch themselves unprepared for the question of salary. Maybe it comes up sooner in the hiring process than they expected. They hadn't thought it all the way through. They feel uncomfortable. Often corporations ask us to name a number, right? And again, not everyone comes prepared for how to handle that. This is one where I think it's important to, I guess, well, actually, I would say for everything, what's the real root cause of this? Typically, though, when it hits the point where I didn't ask for enough and now I feel stuck, it tends to lead to resentment and disappointment. And so being clear on why you didn't do it in the first place so that we can really learn and grow. And because whatever that fear was, if you're going to readdress this with your manager, it's likely to still be there and to crop up. So have to name that fear and break it down so that we can increase the confidence around that. And then it's really doing some research. What would have been the right number? Is that in alignment with what the company does pay, what the market value is? What have you accomplished so far? How long has this situation gone on? Is this a month in or is it 9 months in? And I do recommend thinking of this like a SWOT analysis, right? What's your case going to be for making this um, pitch for a salary adjustment? And it really depends on understanding your manager, their personality style, and where your corporation is in the moment. I have one client going through this right now, and through the process of, asking her to do her research, to think of how she would frame her pitch. What is the inflation in the city? She lives in a big city. What does the inflation look like there? What is the market share? Have you tested your resume recently, right? What do you command in the market? Are you getting any bites on your resume? Where is are people hiring right now? This isn't the greatest time of year for going into this, just from a budgeting standpoint and also a hiring standpoint. But through the process, what she realized the impetus for her was trying to purchase her own condo and the cost being a greater percentage of salary than she anticipated. Is that the right framing for I need a salary increase? Probably not, right? But going through, looking what the market can bear, talking to someone more senior than she is, how do we handle this process in this organization that she's been at for about a year? She's learned a lot more about the requirements, the process. And for her, where we've landed is she needs to reframe expectations. And that she should continue to build the case of what does she bring to the table and be ready for what she now knows is the organizational rhythm in the spring for when salary reviews take place, so that she can make her case well before her annual review, so that while budgets are being determined, while her manager has the opportunity to be her champion, she's already made the case there.
Yeah. Boy, that's great advice. Great advice. I often work with clients who, gratefully, we get to the idea of negotiation sooner than being stuck in a job where they're not being paid well. And you're so right. Doing the research and testing out what the market will bear, but doing the research for similar positions in a similar location with a similar kind in a similar industry, it's always really good advice, because you may find that the range is higher than you've ever been paid before. And if they've asked you what you were making, which I never suggest you answer, if they ask you and you tell them, then they could come in, they could lowball you in terms of what the market will bear. But based on what you've been making, and it's a 10% or a 15% increase, and you think you're doing well. And if you haven't done your research, then you may be shortchanging yourself, and you'll find yourself, once you start that job, in the position that you just described.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we want to try to avoid that.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I think that every job seeker has to be prepared.
Yeah.
For how do I handle this?
Yeah. And you said every job seeker. I'd love to share this. I tell all of my clients, you are not a job seeker. You're a solution provider.
Love it. Yeah.
Right. So when you just flip the switch a little bit on that, it's a mindset shift. If you think of yourself that way, then you're offering the company the solution for the problem they are trying to solve by hiring someone in this position.
That's right. It steps you into the value you bring to the table. That's right? Versus this was my salary then, and this is a certain increase. It's what value do I bring, and how important is the problem to solve for you?
What are the solutions you provide? Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, here's another one. What if you're the primary breadwinner, and it is always challenging to even think about exploring new options when you have the weight of that on your shoulders, and it seems really hard to leave what you perceive to be a good thing, right? You know what your salary is, you know what the benefits are, you have come to rely on those. So what do you do to just start opening the aperture and exploring other options that might be out there? What do you suggest?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think we get too much in the devil we know kind of mentality, right? Of better to stay where we are. I think you can start with small steps. Again, what kinds of things are you interested in moving on to? And how do you look for those roles? Is there any further experience or education that would benefit you? There's so many opportunities for learning now with remote learning, right? LinkedIn learning, all kinds of different ways to get added reinforcement to our skill set. So doing a little research on what are you interested in and what are they looking for can be a great way to add to your background and to start to explore next steps. What's transferable and how might you make the case for that? I think that LinkedIn is one of the best places to do this. LinkedIn offers such an easy way to dip your toe into a lot of areas to where you can position yourself as a subject matter expert just by the content you share and the comments that you make, by engaging with other people who might be in the industries you're interested in, have the types of roles you're interested in, the areas that you're passionate about, right? That get you excited as a person and as a professional. Creating your own content with LinkedIn articles, or even publishing somewhere like Medium, where again, you're able to position yourself as a subject matter expert. It doesn't take a lot of activity on LinkedIn to get noticed by other people who are looking for you. And I think this helps to open up our mind of our growth as a professional beyond where we are right now. And it's a way of kind of engaging in a little bit of a passive job search by starting to name and claim what you're interested in and what you're expert at.
I love that. I also would like to add to that it's really a good idea to talk to people who are already in the kind of position you think you might like to do. The kind of role, maybe you want to explore different industries or different career paths, or a similar career path, but in a different company. How do you just kind of learn about what those options are like? The best way I know how is to, on LinkedIn, go find people who are doing that. You may not yet be connected to them, but when you find a company who does something that interests you and there's a role and somebody's in that role, connect with them on LinkedIn and just send them a private message that says, hey, I am just in the exploratory stages, and I love what you do. Would you connect with me and give me 15 minutes over coffee, a virtual coffee? I'd love to just pick your brain. Those kinds of conversations can open lots of doors, and they are and most people love it when somebody reaches out and says, I would love your advice. Most people like to respond to that.
Yeah, I think people are very receptive in most cases. And I think the way you position it with just honesty and openness and clarity of what you're looking for with them is important. One of the other resources that a lot of people don't always think about on LinkedIn is there's a lot of affinity groups on LinkedIn, right? So female marketers or marketing for a certain vertical. So there's also a lot of groups that give you a lot of insight into a profession, an industry, and again, a place to engage and connect with people who share that work or that passion.
Right. Absolutely. The idea of networking, virtual networking is, if that's not a part of your strategy to explore options, it should be. And if you're not good at that, work with someone who can help you figure out how to dip your toe in that water in a way that it feels, probably a little uncomfortable, but it's not a huge leap.
Right.
And start small with small steps, like you started out by saying. That's so in everything you're doing that's new, is just start with small steps. Just do one small thing. I just wrote an article yesterday. It really is just a 1% shift each day or each week, that you just do 1% more, and that will get you where you need to be eventually.
Yeah. To not overwhelm ourselves with trying to do it all at once and make it a bigger job or project than it needs to be.
Because most of us are busy, right? We have busy lives. We are busy at work. We have busy family lives, and we have other obligations. So and as long as you're not out of work and there is some urgency in finding new work, then you have maybe the luxury of time, if you just think about how you want to pace yourself to get that done. Okay, let's talk about another scenario. I call myself a master of reinvention because I've done it a whole bunch of times in my career. But many women had to reinvent themselves after career transitions, right? Staying home for parenting or caregiving, for example. As a result, they can feel limited by the time they've had to step away from the work world to fulfill other obligations. How would you suggest they move back into it with more confidence?
Yeah, and it's funny, that's part of what inspired the book, because I realized there's this commonality between chronic illness or the loss of health and job loss, where there's this feeling of a loss of identity. And so for many women who've been parents or caregivers in other forms and have stepped away from the corporate world for a while, they went through that loss of identity, that I'm not a sales manager anymore. And often you hear the word just, right? I'm just a stay-at-home mom, or I'm just a, And again, that language that already limits ourselves.
Yeah.
And that was a process probably of letting go of that professional self and embracing the season of their life where they are. And then when it's time to do that again, I think a lot of women do feel that they can't step exactly back into where they were, or heaven forbid, above that, right? And I think this is getting clear on who we are, our strengths, that worth that we bring to the table, and not discrediting the many things we've done while we've been home. I know for myself, I helped raise over $1 million for one organization as a volunteer. And I know lots of other women who are doing nonprofit work, volunteer work that's significant. They're mobilizing, excuse me, they're mobilizing a lot of people. They're raising money. They're using influence, sales, management, right? So I would say one big thing is to really lean into your volunteer experience and what skill set did you continue to utilize all these years or polish, and to really own and claim that. The other one is, again, where can you build, right? There's so many different, as I said before, LinkedIn learning, certifications. On LinkedIn now, you can validate your soft skills through a series of quizzes. So there's ways that you can increase this idea of endorsement of your skills, even though a part of you is telling yourself, oh, that's all been dormant. It probably really hasn't. And I think to also be able to position the lessons learned. I think most of us have greater clarity about who we are, at our core, our values, our strengths. And so again, that clarity and self-awareness is something that you can really leverage.
Yeah, I love that. That's so again, such great advice. I think about some of the skills that women who leave the workforce or adjust their schedule for caregiving purposes, right? There are so many skills required as a caregiver. Your advocacy skills,
that's right,
nothing else, have to be honed remarkably when you're a caregiver and you're looking out for someone else, a parent, in my case, a spouse, and you're advocating for their health, their well-being, their quality of life. And there's a lot of there's a lot of skill. There's time management. There are time management skills and organizational skills.
That's right.
And don't overlook any of those.
That's right.
Because you're so right. And as a and with you in your situation, with a health situation, a chronic health. I love that you call yourself a chronic health warrior. Most people say they're survivors, but this is an ongoing thing for you. It's
That's right.
an ongoing thing for my husband as well. So I'm going to share that with him and call him a warrior from now on.
I love that.
Yeah, but I don't overlook the compassion, the empathy, the soft skills that you have to have, patience. They are all skills that good leaders
Absolutely
in corporate America need to have in order to be seen by their management team, their staffs, as leaders worthy of following.
Absolutely. And I know even for myself, based on being on a board for a nonprofit, people have used me as a reference for getting back into the work world. So again, your volunteer work, your nonprofit work, board experience especially, that shows leadership. And so really, again, stepping back and naming it. A top 10 accomplishment list is a really concrete way to do this. I always tell people, what's your top 10 accomplishments in life? It doesn't have to just be professional, but you ran a marathon. What did you learn from that? And so I think when you broaden our thinking, and that's probably the big key for getting unstuck. When we're unstuck, it's that feeling, again, we're boxed in. It indicates a little bit the blinders are on, right? We
Yeah.
can't see how to get unstuck. You can only do that by broadening your perspective and
Right.
opening up.
Yeah. And stepping in and owning who you are and what you've done, the qualities you bring, the value you bring. And that really does require a keen awareness of, and I love your idea of writing down your top 10 accomplishments in life and career, and own those, because there are things that are of value to others if you just position yourself well as you seek that next role for which you are a solution provider.
That's right. It gives you the confidence to tell that story about who you are and what you bring to the table.
Yeah. 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 Who you are, what you value, and what you want. Those are really the key elements to knowing, creating a vision for what you want next, and being able to move in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes when we try to put ourselves exactly in the same box we were once in, that creates that same feeling of being stuck. And that was part of my journey with chronic illness, that I kept trying to recreate what and how I did before, but it kept having this ongoing challenge of my health. And I had to take a big step back and say, what am I good at? What do I love? What do I love about that? And what are those skills, and how can I apply those differently?
Right.
So, and that's how this was born, of turning into coaching and training, rather than keep trying to put myself into this corporate box that didn't really work for my physical needs and my family's needs anymore.
Yeah, I love the question, what if, right? So if you find yourself feeling stuck in some role or experience, just ask yourself a question. What if I could do X? What if I could explore Y? What if? What if it could be different? What if it could be, it just opens the options for you. It opens the aperture. So those are, that's what you gotta be asking yourself some questions about. If you feel stuck, if you feel limited, what if I could change this?
Right.
What would that look like? And sometimes you are too close to it.
Yes.
To see it for yourself. So if you are, I had a prospect just yesterday who's become a client today, I'm grateful to say.
Wonderful.
She actually said to me, what I've been doing isn't working. And that's an important realization.
Absolutely.
So she's too close to it for her to be able to really see all the possibilities and move in that direction, because she can't see them. All right, so let's talk about other ways to move forward when you feel stuck or limited in life or career. What do you think? Are there other ways?
I think it does go back to that increasing self-awareness of, what is it that I really want? What feels limited and why? And sometimes it's a signpost. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's, I've grown. The shirt's too small. I've grown. It's time for another size, something different, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but to be aware of those emotional signposts, that you're starting to not feel as happy, as engaged, as challenged, motivated. What are those messengers telling you? And if we can listen a little bit more to those whispers earlier on, it usually prevents it from escalating to the point where we feel there's no options. Sometimes we've gone too long without really listening to ourselves. So what is it this messenger is telling you about what your next step or your desires look like? Once you're honest about that and can accept really where you are, why you feel the way you feel, then you can move through. I always say that acceptance is the antidote to resistance.
Yeah.
Just fully embracing where we are in the moment and having that radical honesty with ourselves. As to your point, sometimes we need a sounding board to do this. Doesn't necessarily have to be a professional coach like ourselves, but resources and tools, thought leaders that we follow, a mentor or a friend that we trust, that we can use as a sounding board. Some of us need to process verbally to gain clarity.
Yeah, that's so true. That is so true. And some people need to write it out. It's another thing. I know you're a writer. I'm a writer. Yeah. And I encourage my clients to write things out, get them out of their head so that they don't keep overthinking, and they think that there's nothing different. They can't do anything different, right? Yeah, writing things down, getting the emotions out, getting the situation out, and then leaving it alone for a bit and then reading it back after a fashion and just taking a different perspective.
Yeah, I think that's important because sometimes otherwise we're inadvertently feeding that anxiety loop.
Right.
And rehashing. And then the story we've told ourselves about the situation is more powerful than the actual situation.
That's right. So, I love the way Wayne Dyer puts it, right? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
is so true. And it's a matter of perspective. And as we've said it before, sometimes we are just too close to the situation. I know I have what I call my personal board of directors. They are a group of people who support me in every aspect of my life. And depending on what's going on, I know who I can talk to, who will help me see things more clearly, who will call me on my stuff, who will tell me I am just wallowing in it and kind of try to snap me out of it. We all go through that. So having that inner circle, like I said, I call mine my personal board of directors. These are folks that I trust will tell me the truth. And when I feel too close to it, like I just can't get past whatever it is I'm dealing with, I talk to somebody about it. It's important to have those people. All right.
And if you don't, sorry, I was going to say, if you don't, that's something to be thinking about of, cultivating those kinds of relationships. And are you that to someone else?
That's true. That's absolutely true. All right. You talked about signposts a moment ago. One of the signposts I see a lot popping up for people, whether they're not always aware of it themselves, is the struggle with burnout or being on the verge of burnout. What are some of the signs in your experience that can trigger the knowing about I'm here, I'm in burnout?
I think procrastination's a big one. Procrastination's treated like a dirty word, like, oh, you procrastinated, like it's the worst thing ever. But it's usually a very strong messenger about something you don't like, something you've outgrown, something that no longer satisfies or engages you. And I think that's often what burnout initially looks like: boredom, lack of focus. Sometimes it shows up as things like the Sunday scaries, where you're just like, I don't want to get out of bed tomorrow. When it's starting to get worse, it often turns into things like cynicism, a little bit more negative attitude, maybe even interpersonal conflict. Mental, emotional, physical exhaustion means you're kind of shifting into a chronic stress column, and you're getting to the screaming stages, right? I think the big thing with burnout is figuring out, again, what's the real root? Is this from external or internal? Are you trying to do it all, be it all for everyone and everything? Are you afraid of people not liking or respecting you, so you're having a hard time with boundaries or saying no? Is this a perfectionism? that's driving within yourself? Are you the one setting the bar, unreasonably high? Or is it really from external forces where, again, the job isn't a fit or no longer a fit?
Yeah. I think often it's thinking you have to live up to other people's expectations of you or what you should do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that clarity of where is the source really coming from? Oftentimes we are trying to be, superwoman and do it all on personally and professionally. And where can we dial back? What's the most important priority for this season of our life?
Yeah. And again, we talked about this word before, but the setting of boundaries is so critical in order to avoid getting to that kind of end stage of burnout. That is, it's to be avoided because I've experienced it myself. I know others who have as well. I have some clients who are in the midst of it. It's really hard to come back from. It's really because you've just gone over the edge.
Yeah, it's a deep depletion, right?
It is.
And to build that back up takes time. Those energy reserves, the wherewithal. And that's that sign we were sort of trying to dig in and it's not there. You have to ask the hard questions of where is it coming from and what can we do? And sometimes it isn't, oh, I need a new job. It's, I need some hobbies. Yeah. I'm not pouring into myself, right? I'm not nurturing other sides of myself that do fill me back up in a different way than just plopping on the couch and watching Netflix and scrolling on my phone, right? That are engaging the deeper parts of ourselves.
Right. That's such a good point. So often we are focused on what we think are the top priorities in our lives. And the truth is, if we are not the number one priority, we can't be at our best for anything else that we do or anyone else that we need to be there for. So that's a really hard realization for most women to make. But when you start elevating yourself up the ranks a little bit each time, so that you're taking care of yourself first, you can avoid burnout.
That's right.
You can avoid the kind of the ugliness of, and I think you can also, when you are that self-aware, you can also avoid this sense of being stuck and being limited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think people who've hit that really deep stage of burnout would tell you there were signs, they ignored them, right? They talked themselves out of them. So getting still from time to time too, right? Of just being a little still so you have some space to reflect and process.
Yeah. And cutting yourself a break. I like to say giving yourself grace, right? It's okay not to be perfect.
Right.
It wasn't intended. That was not intended. Perfection is not.
Right.
Excellence is a good thing to strive for. Perfection.
Yeah, that's a better word.
Right? Just strive for excellence instead. All right. So I have one more question for you, and I'd like to get through it pretty quickly so we can get to your tips, so we can wrap this up. I could talk to you forever, you and I.
Same.
How do you coach yourself? This is the subject of your book, right?
Yeah.
How do you coach yourself through crisis and change?
Yeah. So we all face crises, big and small, sometimes self-created, sometimes things like completely out of our control, like the pandemic that we all have experienced. Coaching is about powerful questioning. So it's asking the questions, it's asking the hard questions, and it's about that radical honesty and what you said about self-compassion. This is listening without judgment, right? This is active listening to ourselves, empathetic listening to where we can be really honest about it and asking questions. That's one tool I put in the book where there's powerful questions at the end of each chapter. And you can find reflective questions in a lot of different places. A wheel of life exercise is a great way to take a snapshot of where you are and who you are, and what areas of your life are you feeling fulfilled, and what areas might need work. So there are tools out there, but again, I think it really begins with making space to ask the hard questions and to honor how you really feel.
Yeah, and that really takes a self-awareness, and I'd love to add to that. You said it before. You don't necessarily have to hire a coach like Christine or me to go through this, but it helps to talk to someone you trust who will tell you the truth, so that you don't, as you're going through those probing questions that dig deep, that you don't keep telling yourself I'm going to be brutally honest here, the lies, right?
Yeah.
That we keep telling ourselves, those beliefs that we grew up with. We're not challenging them enough. So using someone as a sounding board to make sure you're not leading yourself in the wrong direction, right? Or you're not leading yourself in the best direction,
right,
by answering these questions yourself and writing them out. So I love what you say. Coaching is about asking great questions and being honest with the answers you come up with. I love that. That's great. You guys all have to get Christine's book, because those questions she asks are compelling. They will get you thinking. They will get you feeling, and everyone should have questions like that. All right. So, Christine, we always end our episodes with this segment where my guest shares their best tips and strategies, practical ideas that people can take away with them today. It's why I call the show Tips for the Transition. So let's go through your tips for our audience. What's your first one?
Well, we talked about self-awareness. I always say that self-awareness and soft skills are the key to success. If we're not self-aware, then we can't really accurately gauge our soft skills, right? And so increasing our self-awareness with this kind of work that we're talking about, with other kinds of tools, assessments. You mentioned an intro. DISC is one of my favorite go-to tools, because it does help us increase self-awareness and awareness of others, and give us a framework for increasing our emotional intelligence and communication skills. Emotional intelligence and communication skills underpin all of our other soft skills. But no matter what you do, whatever profession you're in, it's soft skills that set people apart. And if you want to be in leadership, then your soft skills really need to be next level. So that's the big one, of trying to work on and develop what are your strengths and how can you leverage and capitalize those to be able to name and claim them and develop those in your soft skill repertoire. I think it's the most important professional key to success.
And I would add, it is also a key to personal success.
Yes.
In relationships and I mean, everything we do is a relationship, right?
That's right.
With something, with someone, with an organization, with a team, with our families, with our friends, with our community, with the boards we're on, etc. All relationships.
That's exactly right.
And if we learn how to, I love it, a name and claim. I love what you say. Name and claim those skills that we bring to the table. Then I call it stepping into your power.
Yes.
That's where your power lies.
Yeah. And I would say the other two important fundamental coaching questions that you need to be able to answer is, what's essential to you, right? What do you value? What's most important to you? And what does a successful, fulfilling life look like to you?
Right.
You have to define what that is in order to set those boundaries, make the right choices about, what environment's the right fit for you and what's the right next opportunity. So Who are you at your core, and what is essential to you?
And a lot of people can't answer that question without some guidance.
Right.
So again, these are the tough questions that you may be able to journal it out for yourself and have lots of aha moments. And I encourage you to do that. But if you get stuck, there's that word again. If you get stuck with that, don't sit with it. Don't stay there. Don't stay stuck where you don't belong.
That's right.
Reach out to someone who can help you with that. And that there are lots of people who can do that, especially people who are trained like Christine and I are trained. So don't do it alone. Please don't do it alone. Do you have one more tip for us?
I would say being able to tell your career story is really important.
Okay.
What's the arch that kind of brings it together again? Who are you as the unique human that you are? You know, I don't know why I always say marketing as an example when I talk about this. It's stuck in my brain, but you know, there's lots of VPs of marketing. What makes you that unique, special VP of marketing? So being able to tell your career arc, your career story succinctly is important. And that, again, it does take some time to refine, and it takes clarity in order to be able to do that succinctly. I think that's a really important skill, though, to be able to tell that career story. What's the arc of your professional journey?
I love that. And I think when you can do that well, that's what positions you to move in the direction of your vision, of your dream.
Yes.
That's when you can do that well, when you are so clear about who you are and what you want and what value you bring to whatever situation in your life or career. That's when you are standing in your power and you're showing up the way authentically and the way that you want to be seen and heard. So I love that. This is such a great conversation. Christine, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. I know that there are people who are going to want to get in touch with you. They're going to want to look you up. What is the very best way for them to do that?
My website is probably the one-stop spot, right, where you can find links to social. I am active on LinkedIn. You can find me there, but paperdollcommunication.com is the overarching website. Link to the book is there, etc.
That's
and
perfect.
some resources for careers, etc.
It is all there, all there. Okay. Christine, again, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation with you, and I am sure that our audience has gotten a lot out of it.
I hope so. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Thank you. All right. And for everyone else, I want to thank you for watching and listening. I appreciate that you are a part of this community. So if you enjoyed this episode, if you got something out of it, please leave us a comment or a review and pick a star rating if it's available to you. As I said at the top of the show, I love creating and sharing resources like these podcasts for professional women who feel stuck in their careers. So if something resonated and you would like to get a fresh perspective, reach out and let's chat about it. You'll find all the links to learn more about Christine and me in the show notes below. And I invite you to continue this conversation in my Facebook group called the Career Transition Roadmap. So again, look for the links below. And then we'll meet you again here next Wednesday, same time, same place. Because you know what? I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.